All right, guys. This is Harris DeMarco. This is episode number 3 with Dan Fink. What's happening, Dan? How are we feeling today?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. Had a good day at the gym, so.
Yeah, nice day at the gym.
Yeah.
Dude, you've been kicking ass in the gym.
You know it.
I'm serious, man. I saw your pictures, and it's really inspiring, man.
Thanks.
So I'm seeing a lot of good stuff from you. So I reached out to you back in November, actually. Mm-hmm. It's, what is it now, February?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, February time frame. And I saw that you completely changed. Your transformation picture really impacted me. And I didn't realize that that you were struggling with addiction at that time.
Sure was.
Yeah, so anything you want to say, like, from the start of that, like how you started, you know?
Yeah, I can get into it a little bit. Without spending too much time on my childhood, I mean, I grew up in a very tumultuous home. It was not a good environment. Not for lack of my parents trying, but it wasn't so much that they didn't like my siblings and I, so much that they hated each other.
Mm-hmm.
So from that, it was just, I never had a Christmas or a birthday or any kind of holiday where one of them didn't wind up getting arrested or hitting each other or having the cops called. And it affected me. You know, I pretty much raised my siblings.
Mm-hmm.
My mom did the best she could. My dad provided the best he could. But at the end of the day, it was always going to mess us up a little bit. It wasn't the complete deciding factor because I decided to do the drugs, you know? Mm-hmm. The first drug I ever tried was marijuana, obviously. Mm-hmm. But, you know, things go on. You do that shit when you're kids. And then when I was still pretty young, I tried my first Vicodin, and it was almost like a switch clicked in my head.
Yeah.
It was bad, though, like a bad switch. Like, I didn't realize how broken inside that I was. Mm-hmm. And when I took the drug, it was like the world was suddenly very vibrant. Like, I wasn't angry anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's not good, you know? It was.
So how old were you when you started Vicodin? Like
15.
15 years
mm-hmm.
old. And you got it, was it like prescribed because you were like had an injury or something? Or?
No, I just had access to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was around pretty much. And it was like around a lot to the point where I didn't pay for it, so I was just like stealing it from the people that got it prescribed that I was around and taking it as much as possible, and that progressed into an Oxycontin addiction, which progressed into a heroin addiction. Like, people say that it doesn't lead there, but it always will.
Right.
10
Definitely.
10 out of 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
10 out of 10 times you'll wind up with bags of heroin in your hand.
So you, like in high school, you were doing Vicodin, and because I knew you in high school,
mm-hmm.
we graduated the same class together. We weren't that close, but we had a few classes together. I remember kicking ass in mat ball, in gym class, I think.
God, Edison High.
Yeah, right. Classic, man.
Wow.
But
that's crazy.
Yeah, man, we were in a little bit of different social circles. But yeah, tell me a little bit about like high school, like going through the, you know, being addicted to Vicodin, and then did you do heroin in high school? Like, did you start then? Or?
I didn't start heroin until I was like 18. Mm-hmm. The Vicodin addiction started at 15, but it was less pronounced until I switched over to Oxycontin. Like, it was more infrequent. It was more, not so much controlled as like, I didn't really understand. I was slipping deeper and deeper. So from 15 to 18, it was not as bad as, you know, it was the beginning of the addiction. Everything's great. You're not stealing to survive. You're not hurting people. Mm-hmm. I wasn't paying for it, so there wasn't really any downsides. And it wasn't until I switched over to Oxycontin when I had to start paying for it, when you start to realize it was out of my control at that point. Because when you try to stop taking painkillers, there's a saying. So stopping Xanax will kill you. Stopping painkillers will make you want to kill yourself. And wow. That's how it was. I'll touch on this more later, but when I finally did quit, they had me chained to a bed so that I wouldn't hurt myself. Mm-hmm. Because that's how bad the pain is. It's like the worst pain you could ever imagine amplified. Like, every nerve ending on your body is... And imagine being like 16 and like I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what withdrawal was. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't take the Vicodin and I'd feel... Right. It would be bad. And like I didn't know. I'd go smoke weed to alleviate the symptoms, but that's because Vicodin's less of a pronounced painkiller than the rest of them are. Once I started getting into the heavier ones, the withdrawal became worse and worse to the point where I couldn't function without it.
so you're struggling with that at 16. Like, emotionally, how does that feel? Especially when, you know, I know there's a lot of statistics now. Like, there's a lot of younger kids who are, you know, experimenting with drugs and things like that, or like ecstasy, marijuana, even pills, you know, popping pills and stuff. So it starts young, and it definitely, like, it seems like it always stems from something from the home. But just from what you were just mentioning, you know, from your household, you know, and then looking for something to relieve yourself from this anxiety, this pain that you had inside. Like, what were some of the other emotions that you went through, especially going through withdrawal for the first time? Like, you might have thought that you were probably like sick or had the flu, right?
I didn't know what was going on, honestly. I didn't know what addiction was until my brother came to me when we were still doing Vicodin, and he told me, we had started doing it together. He was like, we have to stop. We can't do it anymore. We're going to become addicted. I'd never heard the word addicted. Like, I'd heard the word addicted, but I didn't associate it with myself. He was like, we're going to become addicted. We're stopping today. And I went, okay. And as soon as I closed my bedroom door, I did more Vicodin.
Oh, man.
And I was sitting there and I was like, why did I do that? I thought we were quitting. And then I was like, let me do one more. And then so I could figure this out. And I did more, and I was like, So he came to me the next day and he was like, staying strong, right? You haven't done any more. And I was like, sure didn't. And then I closed my bedroom door and I went and did some more.
Oh, man.
And I was sitting there and I was like, why didn't I lie? I'd never lied to him before. We were always ride or die. I'd never lied to him. I couldn't understand why I was doing it. So I was a bit of a nerd techie growing up. I had a computer with internet access at 16, and I went to Google and I typed in, why am I lying about my drug habits? And Google came up with, I'll never forget this, I swear to God. Google, the first hit was a list of 10 things that are signs that you're an addict. Number 3 was lying to your family about it.
Right.
And I went through this list, and boy, did I checked every box. Lying to your family, stealing, you know, other stuff, only feeling okay when you're on it. I would do anything to get it. Like, I literally checked every box, and I went, I'm a drug addict. I'm okay with that.
Did you have any denial, like,
No.
at that time?
I had zero. It's fucked up because I just immediately accepted it. I was like, okay, I'm a drug addict. You know, I was a kid. You don't think about how it's going to ruin your life.
Yeah, you never think either that you'll be addicted to something. Like, you might see people who have gone through addiction and stuff, and you're like, oh, they're drug addicts. Oh, they're fiends, you know, whatever. They're tweakers, whatever you want to call them. And you see them, you know, if you go to the city or if you go anywhere, Philadelphia, New York City, and you walk on the street, you might see some, but you never relate to yourself, especially in that early stage. You would never even realize that you were a drug addict.
Especially in that early stage, because the people you're seeing, they're at the end where it's bad. And when you're in the beginning, it's almost like the honeymoon phase in a relationship where it's like, everything's great. You're not doing anything bad to do it. You have no adverse side effects. But 10 out of 10 times, it'll always end with you looking like a crackhead on the street.
So, like, looking back at that phase, you know, like where you just started using, what are some things that maybe you think you should have done better or you could have changed to maybe prevent the habit from progressing into its later stage of heroin?
Honestly, I can't think of anything. I guess if I had spoken up, but I didn't want to speak up.
Yeah, hindsight's always 20/20 anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, but so you feel really helpless in that situation, right? And did you have any like family support, like initially, like other than your brother? Did anybody else in your family know what was going on?
See, here's the thing about. I mean, this might be specific to my addiction, but not really. You know, it's different for everybody. But I hid it from everyone. I considered it my nice little secret. I thought it made me different than everybody. I thought it made me powerful, gave me false courage. Whenever I felt bad, I would snort it and then go look at myself in the mirror, like my little secret. Like, just look at myself in the eyes, and I would feel better. But it was bad. I don't know. I thought I was a badass, but really I was just pushing my feelings down and inducing euphoria. That's what it is. Painkillers, heroin, they induce euphoria, and that's what you chase. You're not chasing not feeling pain. You're chasing the fact that it releases the happy chemical in your brain.
So you felt happy.
All the
You were
time.
going around, walking around,
Everything was great.
talking to people like it was nothing.
Everybody loves me. It's actually funny that we're talking about this time because I was just with someone at the gym earlier who I knew from that time, who knew me in that stage, and was asking me about how I got out of it. She was actually, it was funny. And, I told her about how I changed everything. And she was like, I was never confident. And she was like, I don't know, when I knew you, you seemed pretty confident. And I was like, that was the drugs. And she was like, no. She's like, I think you always had it in you. She's like, it was more than that. You always had it in you. I think the drugs helped you cope and pretend that you were, but I think you were deep down. And it like blew me away today. I was like, oh, okay.
Wow, that's a great compliment, man.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. I was like, thanks. I was like, my ego, I walk a thin line between confident and egotistical, and I teeter-totter between the two all the time.
Don't we all?
I can't help it.
Definitely, man. But that's a great compliment, and a lot of people, they don't have like even anybody to even say that to them, and struggling with addiction, like I mentioned to you before we got started that I've seen it in my family. I've seen it in my spouse's family. So we've all struggled with it together, and between alcoholism, heroin addiction, it's a real problem, like right now especially. And just hearing like a little bit from you right now is just to say that there is actually hope. There is a light. There
is definitely a light. I could tell you that. I've never been happier in my life.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been sober now?
It's coming up on 3 years, May 31st.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that, man.
Thanks, man.
May 31st. I'll have to remember that. 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Don't worry, there'll be a Facebook post.
Yeah, man. Speaking of Facebook posts, that's how we got connected initially, too, because I saw your before and after picture, and I thought, it might have been just a high school picture versus like a picture now. It's like, 10, 12 years later, something like that. And, like I said, I realized that you were struggling with addiction, and I just wanted to actually share one of these posts. Like, I'll just do a little screen share really quick here. So let's see what we got. So you shared, all right, so this image that I'm looking at here, on the left-hand side, looks like you're a rocker dude. You got your shirt off, some trunk showing a little bit, a little ring around your neck there. That's cool, man. But you look skinny. Honestly, you look a little bit sick. Like you're going through something. And then in the other picture, the after picture, it looks like you got a six-pack, man. You're ripped out of your mind. You've been working your ass off. You got the tapered V shape, bodybuilding, your vascularity's there. You look great in that second picture. So when was that first picture taken?
Am I on a Batman shirt?
Not the Batman shirt. You're shirtless right here.
Shirtless? Oh, in gray shorts?
It looks like you're in a belt. You got your trunk showing. Wish I could show you, actually. I think it was the first picture. You're kind of like this with like the camera.
That was my first day out of rehab.
Really?
Yeah. If it's the picture I'm thinking of, that was day one, and the other one was like 2.5 years later.
Oh, wow. So how many times did you have to go to rehab?
So I went twice. My addiction came to a head. Timeline gets a little fuzzy because I was doing drugs, but I want to say the addiction really crashed down around me 4 or 5 years ago. Let's go with 5 years ago. I went to rehab, stayed sober for a year, and then made the mistake of moving back up here. I went to rehab in Florida. I should have mentioned that.
Okay.
So then I stayed sober in Florida for a year, moved back up here, relapsed within a week.
A week?
Didn't last 1 week.
How? Was it just the people, like, connecting with them again?
I got a job the minute I moved up here. It was in a restaurant setting. I don't know if I was looking for it or if it just fell into my lap, but I noticed somebody nodding out at a terminal, and honestly, the way that I tell the story is that I went down there and stopped doing drugs, like I went to rehab, but I changed nothing. Mm-hmm. I was the same old fucking asshole. I just didn't do heroin anymore. Mm-hmm. So when I came back up here and put myself in almost like New Jersey's, no offense, not a good place. It's very,
horrible.
very
it's
drug infested. Like you go down, like Florida's the recovery capital of the world, but it's very drug infested up here, and it's just a very bad climate. And I came up here, put myself in it, saw somebody nodding out at a terminal, and I was like, "You do heroin?" And they were like, "No." Like obviously they deny, and I was like, "You do?" I was like, "I know the signs." I was like, "I want some." Mm-hmm. And they were like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And I was like, "I'll buy you some." And they were like, "I'll call him right now."
Holy shit. So, just like that.
And then I relapsed for like, I want to say 6 months to a year. And finally, my baby brother has always been, my baby brother Jason, he has always been, like, even when I had nothing, I had him. He was the person that brought me down to rehab the first time. He was the person that figured out I relapsed when I came up here. He like knew. I don't know how he knew. I guess he like studied the science and he figured it out and he told my mom and he was like, you got to go get help again. He's always been in my corner. And I went back down to Florida for a second time. You know, I had two options: run away and live with my drug dealing girlfriend and do heroin and die, which is what would have happened, or go back to rehab in Florida. And I weighed the options.
So how long before you went back to rehab in Florida? So you came back up here after like a year or whatever, after rehab the first time. Then you started up again, you relapsed. So then when did you go back to
like
Florida?
8 months later.
So like 8 months.
I did like heroin for another 8 months. Then I went back, they figured it out. I went back down to Florida.
And you were snorting it or injecting?
Always snorting it. I never injected it, thank God. Actually, the one time I went to inject it, the person that I was with, of all people, who was also a heroin addict, who's actually not with us anymore. She was in high school with us. She passed away from a blood disease of all things, probably because she did heroin. But I asked her to shoot me up because I couldn't do it myself. I don't like needles.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to look. Can you like mix it and shoot me up? Because I hear it's a better high. And she was like, she looked me dead in the eye and she was like, if I shoot you up, you'll never stop. She's like, I'm not doing that. Like, wow. Like a fucking, I don't know if an angel possessed her. She was like, I'm not doing it. She was like, maybe we just do heroin together. Maybe we're friends. But if I do that to you, you'll never stop. She's like, you'll never stop.
That's a scary thing, man. When you're in that position, you know, like same thing. Like I've been in those situations too in high school and right after high school where you might want to try something different. Hey, you're done with, you know, alcohol and stuff like that. And you want to try something else, you know, not even marijuana, but something completely different. And it's that like, there's always that moment where you're actually going to cross that line or you're not going to cross that line. And I mean, man, I can't believe it. That's something else. Like,
yeah.
So then you went back to rehab second time. You got back down to Florida. How'd that feel going back a second time? Like, goddamn, you just went through the whole thing again, and now you're going back to rehab. And rehab is not cheap. You know, it costs a lot of money. Whether you have insurance or don't have insurance, it's a lot of money.
My insurance, since it was a second time, within like 2 years, they were like, give him an ibuprofen and send him home. But the place was like, we're not doing that. And they were like, all right, I guess he could stay. So I got back down there. I didn't go to the same rehab, but I don't know. I was in one of the groups, and I realized that literally 100%, no matter what rehab you go to, it's the same shit. It's the same lessons. It's the same books. They're all the therapists are reading from the same books, and I was like talking to guys that have been to rehab 6 times, 10 times, 12 times. I can't make this up, dude. Like they just can't. It's a revolving door, and I didn't want that to be me. I didn't know what to do. Like I was so distraught. Like, and when you know they had tied me to a bed to wait till they could give me like the stuff they give you to get you off the drugs, and I was like delirious for 2 days. It was bad. Like you know, and even when you finally come down and they help get you off the drugs, your mind is just so fucked up. I went from 1 minute from delusions of grandeur. Like, oh, now that I'm off the drugs, I'm going to be the best ever, to feeling low, like I was the lowest person on earth, like I should just kill myself, nobody cares. And that's a scary thought, to be sitting in a rehab, surrounded by strangers, in the middle of a state where you have nobody, and just, it kept me up at night, and I don't know, I was only there for 3 weeks, and about 2 weeks in, I had an epiphany. I couldn't sleep. I just couldn't sleep. I don't know. It's a thing in rehab where you just couldn't sleep. It was like 4 a.m, and I realized that nothing they told me there, like it didn't sink in the first time. It's not going to make a difference this time. Like if I was going to do this, it had to come from me. Like it had to come from in here. It wasn't going to come from an outside source. Nothing was going to change my mind. Nothing was going to change me but me. I didn't know how to do it, but I knew that my options were that or die, because the addiction would have killed me. I lived in Florida a combined total of 2.5 years. I went to 34 funerals for people that I met in the program that relapsed and died. You can only look so many mothers and fathers in the face and say, like, he was my friend. I did the best I could to keep him sober, like, and watch them cry. I can only do it so many times. I stopped going to the funerals.
Yeah. That's extremely hard, man, going through that. And I mean, from like going to rehab yourself, feeling, you know, the emotions and being, you know, up at night at like 4 a.m., having all those thoughts and stuff, and then to still lose people that you actually knew or were close to. I couldn't imagine going through that. I mean, it's a real issue, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any better either. It seems like it's always up to the individual person to figure out how they're going to get themselves out of hell, essentially, how they're going to claw themselves out of hell. Like, I can't imagine that, man. That's extremely difficult. But somehow you figured it out. So you went to rehab the second time. You went to rehab the second time. And then after rehab, did you stay in Florida or did you end up moving back here?
So I stayed in Florida. I went back to the same halfway house. I had friends there, you know, who I had been with the first time. I wanted to be surrounded by people I knew in recovery. I had worked the 12 steps, and it didn't work for me. I had worked the 12 steps, and it didn't work for me. Doesn't mean that it's not going to work for somebody else. If it wasn't for Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, I wouldn't be sitting here right now, because they kept me sober in the beginning, for sure. Meetings kept me sober. It's something you have to really ingrain in your life, and it just wasn't something that worked for me, you know? But I did take every single one of their principles and apply it to my own recovery, like my own journey. You know, they teach you to, you know, within reason. Like, I did change a lot of things around, which worked for me. I can't tell you that it'll work for everybody, but I realized that if I was going to do this, I was going to have to become a completely different person. The first thing I had to do was accept that every bad thing that happened in my life wasn't everybody else's fault. I blamed everybody else for my problems my whole life. Even if I assigned blame to myself, I always co-assigned blame to somebody else. I took responsibility for every bad thing that I ever did or happened in my life. Step 2, I decided that I was going to... I couldn't just change one thing. I had to change everything. I had to become the opposite of everything that I stood for. So weak becomes strong. Arrogant became dumber. I dumbed myself down. And you know what? I don't regret it at all. I used to be very narcissistic. I thought I was always thought I was the smartest guy in the room. I wasn't. I thought I was, but I always thought I was. And I wasn't the smartest guy in the room. And that was a hard pill to swallow, but it was something I had to accept. You know, it's okay to be of average intellect. You don't have to be a genius. But what you can do is become very strong. I decided I was always going to be the strongest guy in the room. I do pretty well. I do all right.
Yeah, from what I can see, man.
I also realized, see, in NA and AA, they teach you that you have to write down every bad thing you ever did, and you have to apologize and make amends for all those things.
A lot of people don't like apologizing for stuff. I mean, I know myself included.
Well,
you got to swallow that pill and be like, hey, I was wrong, and then face the person and apologize.
I realized I wasn't going to do that. So what I did do was I accepted that I did these wrong things, but I decided that I was never going to say I'm sorry, and I'm way past seeking forgiveness. I don't care. Get over it. Honestly, I did very bad things in my life. I wronged a lot of people. Get over it, okay? Because me saying sorry and making amends is not going to change the things that I did. What I do, me personally, is that I move forward and help everybody that I can. I show people what I learned. I try to make everybody else's lives a little brighter. I try to lead by example. And that's the way that I make amends for the bad things that I did. I could sit there and I could apologize all the livelong day. It won't make a lick of difference. All that matters is what you do. So, you know, I just try and help people. And I told anybody that ever comes at me where they're like, you wronged me, I'm like, I'm not sorry. I'm like, I recognize what I did, but you have to get over it. I was like, you have 3 options. Get out of my way, stand with me, or get knocked down. And I promise you, I'm strong enough to knock you down. I promise. Like, I specifically spend every day working out so I could, knock people down. I don't like to hurt people, but don't get in my way.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to live my life. I'm trying to be a better person.
Yeah. It takes a lot of work to work on yourself too. I mean, going through the program and stuff like that, and then going back into the gym, you have to dig deep. And, I know from experience, what the gym has done for me in the past. I might not look at now, but, we've all been to some dark places, and there's always been some kind of outlet. Some people figure out other outlets, or they start with drugs and go somewhere else. I had a lot of things growing up that helped me by going to the gym and playing football and things. Even some stuff back in 2017 that I was going through. The gym was my outlet, man. And when you're in there, you feel invincible when you're pushing yourself to the limits and stuff, and you're just zoned in. Like, how did that feel getting back into the gym? Like, let me pull up this other picture here that you sent me really quick, because this picture I thought was phenomenal. This was a recent picture. So in this picture, we got 3 shots here.
Oh, yeah.
You got the Flash shirt on. I think it's the Flash, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little lightning bolt there and a tank top. You look really strung out, man. Like really skinny.
That was right before rehab.
Really sick. And just, it's tough. Like, even imagining that looking at you right now, you look so healthy, but this picture says it all. And then the second picture next to that, you got a front double bicep pose, the pythons coming out of your arms. Look at those suckers, man. And then the one in the bottom there, front double bicep. You got the 6-pack showing. You look serious as fuck. You're ready to kill somebody. Just beefed up, dude. You look great, man. How did it feel, getting back into the gym for the first time?
So,
how do you even get yourself to get there after going through NA for a while, right? You were going to the meetings. You had your support system. So, did it just come to you to go to the gym, or was it something somebody said?
It was a combination of things that led to it. Like I said, I was always physically frail. I always acted tough when we were kids, but I wasn't really tough. I weighed like 90 pounds even before I did drugs. Like, anybody could have just swatted me aside, even though I always acted tough. You know what I mean? But I was sick of being weak, not looking weak. I was literally weak, like, physically. I'd never go to sports. I couldn't compete. I had asthma. Like, I was just a physically frail child, and I hated it. I couldn't stand looking at myself in the mirror. I always thought I looked good when I was on drugs, but I really didn't. Before, after, after I look pretty good, but so I had a lot of mentors down there that came in stride. The first one was one of my best friends to this day. Tommy S. He was one of the house managers there. He was a client. The first time I was there, he worked his way up to house manager. He went to the gym every day. It was part of his outlet. He was my first trainer. He brought me to the gym. We worked out together every day, literally every day. I met a bunch of other people that worked out. I had other friends. They started coming with me, and I just paid attention. I didn't know what I was doing. There was a lot of other bodybuilders I met down there that took me under their wings. I trained with professionals that are in the circuit down there. They would laugh at me because I had trouble curling 20-pound dumbbells, and I was like, and they were like, we're laughing because we like your determination. Like, come here, and they taught me what they knew, and that's a lot of what I know. I learned from professionals and people that do this. And my second bodybuilding teacher after Tommy, I don't know if he figured it out or if he could just tell, or if it was the same for him. God bless his soul, he's not with us anymore. He actually relapsed on heroin and passed away. He told me, though, he was like, you're always angry. I thought I hit it pretty well. I thought I hit it pretty well. And I don't know, not many people could tell, but he could tell. He was like, you're always angry. He was like, everybody tells you that you have to let the anger go. Everybody tells you anger's not good. There's not a single quote on the internet about anger being a good thing. There's just not. And he tells me this. He goes, you're angry? Good. Stay angry. But don't let it consume you. Focus it into the gym. and become the biggest fucking beast and monster that you can. He was like, being big, it's not something you can be, it's something you are. He's like, it's all up here. He's like, take that anger, focus it into point. Don't let it become rage. Don't let it consume you. And you'll be the biggest there is. And I still do that to this day. I'm always angry, but I'm not rageful. People make there's a distinction between anger and rage. Anger is usually cold and cool and calculated. People mistake rage for anger.
Right.
I'm never rageful.
I can totally relate with that, man. Especially that was well said. Absolutely well said. You know, harnessing that anger, you can do something with it. It's this energy. It can be destructive, and you can let it get to rage. You know, if it keeps going. But if you harness that energy and put it into something useful, even to build yourself or break yourself down to build yourself back up, and that's exactly what you did. So how was it going back the first day to the gym? Like, let's talk about that first day.
God, walking through those doors, I was completely intimidated, because another thing I always was afraid. I was always afraid. Now, I'm not. You know, I'm never afraid anymore. Well, it's not completely accurate. Everybody feels fear, but very rarely do I had anxiety always. Like, I would have panic attacks. I'd wake up with panic attacks. It doesn't happen anymore. I don't know. I don't know if it came with the strength or if it's just the release of the gym, but it just went away. As I got bigger, as I got stronger, I stopped being anxious. I stopped being afraid. I don't walk into a room anymore and wonder, what are these people doing? Do they like me? Can I say this? I just do what I want, and they better get in line. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
you're your own man now. You know what I mean? It's not like you're trying to put on a show for anybody or anything like that. You're just being yourself.
I'm me, and if you have a problem with it, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. And from going through your experience, you learned a lot about yourself too, you know?
Sure did.
Not just that you screwed up and all this stuff too, but that you have the ability, the mental ability to overcome your obstacles, even the obstacles that you put and you create in front of yourself. That's exactly what you did. So in 2017, right? Mm-hmm. That was your second time coming out of rehab, you said? 2017?
3 years. Yes. Give or take.
Yeah.
Might have been 2008.
So you started the gym right away, and you were working too, had like a full schedule?
I worked as a waiter full time. I worked as a waiter. I made meetings in the beginning. I went to the gym, and I made time for social gatherings. Mm-hmm. I filled my time wisely. I gave up on some of the things that I enjoyed that weren't so much bad, but just weren't contributing. Like, I play video games now because I have a little more time on my hands, but I definitely was like a video game addict for most of my life, and I definitely distanced myself from that, because while they're not bad, it just wasn't contributing anything to what I was trying to build. Mm-hmm. So.
And did any, like, the environment that you had at that time, were you away from people who would influence you, or were you still in that, or were you just saying, no, I don't want to hang out with you anymore, or, I'm not into that life anymore?
I definitely wasn't around people that were trying to put drugs in my face, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. That's why I went away. I don't recommend going to rehab in the state that you did drugs in, because you know people. So even if you're not fucking up while you're in rehab, when you get out, you're surrounded by people that you did drugs with. They don't go away. You tried to change. They just stayed the same. They want to drag you right back down to where you were. I was surrounded by people that were trying to do the same thing I was doing. Honestly, I stayed in the halfway house the first time I was down there the entire time, but I only stayed in the halfway house this time for 2 months. I had to do things different. So I actually moved out with a coworker who wasn't in the recovery lifestyle. And they were all like, you'll be high in a week. You can't do this on your own. It's not going to work. You're not strong enough. And they were looking out for me. You know what I mean? They weren't trying to put me down. They were like, you're not going to be able to do it. You've only got 3 months sober. How are you going to do it? And I was like, I'm either going to do it or I'm not. So I moved in with a coworker that I worked with at the restaurant. And I stuck to my guns. I kept changing. I kept going to the gym every day. I made sure I went to the gym. I went to work. I made meetings at first. Slowly less, I stopped making meetings, not because it wasn't helpful. It just wasn't helpful, you know? And I didn't want to pretend. The first time I was down there, I went to meetings. I didn't want to do it, and I pretended. This time I was like, I decided one of the first things I was going to change is I'm done pretending.
Right.
I was like, I don't want to go. You know, it's not helping me. So I didn't. You know, I was addicted to soft drinks and Red Bull. Switched to just water and protein shakes. I smoked cigarettes my whole life. Gave up those. One of the hardest things. It was harder quitting cigarettes than it was quitting heroin.
Wow.
And I never recommend starting smoking cigarettes. It was literally and my roommate smoked. So while I was trying to I tried to quit 14 times. Failed 14 times until the 15th time. December 24th. I want to say 2017, maybe 2018. The day before Christmas, I didn't even smoke my last cigarette. I just put it down, and I got into a big fight with the girlfriend I had at the time, and she was like, "You're never gonna be able to do this." Like the recovery thing, not even the cigarette thing, and I was like, "Watch me." And I focused it, and I put down the cigarettes, and I got over the 3-day hump, and I haven't looked back since.
You were up for the challenge, man. I mean, cigarettes, you know, a slow killer. Like that's what they say. Both of my parents have been addicted to cigarettes. Family, friends. I mean, anybody knows somebody who's addicted to cigarettes, and it always takes a while. And but yeah, man. I mean, what the heck? Your girlfriend didn't have that support for you?
Well, we had just broken up because she.
Probably the best thing that happened then.
I don't know. We got into a fight, and I was just like, "You walk all over me," and I'm not having it. Like the first time I was down here, you walked all over me, and I'm not having it. I have a spine now.
Yeah, sometimes you have to get rid of those toxic relationships. You know, if anybody's like listening to this fighting addiction, like it's not just the people that you're around, like your friends, but even some of the people that you think are close to you, you know, that you would think would have your back or support you. And they might even just say like that one subtle thing, like, "Oh, you're gonna relapse. You're gonna, you know, do this again." Like just that little subtle thing is like that's planting a seed. Yeah, that's a trigger right there. Like, oh well, yeah, you're right. Screw it. Like, why do I even try? So, how did you feel about like the NA program? Like initially when you went through it, and like I know because I've been to meetings too, and I've seen people who've you know, I've gone as a support for family members, and it is quite the experience hearing people talk about, you know, their what they're going through or their struggles, and you know, whoever the instructor is at the time explaining some things, but it always seemed very clinical to me, and I didn't know if it was going to work or not, but some people it works, some people it doesn't. I mean, what's your thoughts on like the NA program, you know, from going through it?
I can tell you this, it works, and I recommend it for everybody, but it wasn't working for me. Okay, they say that I don't know, maybe I didn't dedicate myself enough to the program. It didn't work for me, but I highly recommend it if you're trying to quit addiction. Hit a meeting. Never pick up, always hit a meeting. I could tell you that much. NA and AA is part of the reason I'm alive right now, because if I hadn't have had them in the beginning of my addiction, I never would have made it. 0%, I would never have made it without that support network. And the support network that I built there, even once I stopped going to meetings, was the same friends I kept when I was down there building everything. Like they stayed my friends even though I stopped going to the meetings. I didn't relapse, so they stayed around me, you know? One of the other things I differ with them is that you get up there and you tell your story, and you always start with how it began, like how we started today. But really for me, when you tell an addiction story, the people, places, and things change, but it's literally always the same thing. It's always the same thing. You change the drug, you change, you know, instead of stealing a guitar, you stole a computer. Like, it's always the same thing. And I just, when people ask me my story, I don't talk about what I did in addiction. I talk about what I did to get out of it. You know, I talk about where I am now and how I fight it every day. Every day I wake up and the demons in my head go, wouldn't it be a great day to do heroin? And instead of doing heroin, I go to the gym and I literally lift weights until they just shut their fucking mouths. Can I curse? I feel like I shouldn't be cursing because we're gonna...
You can curse, man. Yeah, this is a podcast. It's the internet. We can say whatever we want.
All right, cool.
Yeah, fuck those demons, man. You know, do what you got to do to battle them. I hear you. You know, throw some plates on that bar and slam that fucking bar as hard as you can. Whatever you got to do. You got to let it out somehow. Otherwise, what are you going to do? You're going to end up somewhere else doing some other things that are not as productive.
You have to get physically and mentally strong enough so that when your demon's in your lowest point of the week, of the day, of the month, you're going to have a low point. You can't be happy all the time. You can't be up all the time. It's actually not feasible. So when you hit that point and your demon comes around and he's like, hey, want to do some heroin, you have to be mentally strong enough to go, fuck you. And you have to be physically strong enough to choke that demon and just until he's like, okay, never mind, and go away. See you next month. And as time went on, honestly, I say that I wake up every morning and I battle it, and it's partly true, but it's like I don't think about going and doing drugs anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't. I wake up and I think about going to the gym. Mm-hmm. I wake up and I think about, am I going to put up 275 today, like on flat bench? Like that's what I think about. I don't wake up like, hey, life sucks, I need some heroin. I wake up and I go, I got to get my ass to the gym. It's what I love. I love it.
And you rewired your mind, you know, that's what you did. You just completely just created a new neural pathway after, since around 2017 time frame. You've been consistent along the way. Have you ever like taken a week off? No,
I
haven't taken a week off.
I work out, 365, 7 days a week, 24, I never take a day off. I think in the past 3 years, I can count on one hand how many times I've taken off from the gym. I think 2 or 3 of the times was due to my job now. Mm-hmm. I work in the movie business, and sometimes we work 15. You know, if it's like a crazy day, we'll work 15 to 17 hours, and it's just not feasible to do all that physical labor and build movie sets and stuff, and then go to the gym. Like I was just so wiped, and actually, it is feasible to go to the gym after that, but not when you have to be back at 5 a.m, which is how it was at those times. So there was 3 of those times, and then one other time was over a girl, but she tuckered me out. You know what I mean?
Hey, it happens to the best of us, man.
I was like, I cannot believe I'm skipping the gym, but I just can't move right now. And she was like, what can I say? That's what I do. I was like, oh my God.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It was recent too. I was like, what? I was like, how did you do that? And she was just like, I don't know.
Yeah, she got the magic, man. What are you going to do? Oh, man. So you're in the movie business now, doing good things. You're feeling good. You look good, man. And it definitely shows. Was it like from working out so much, like, do you feel connected, like, spiritually? You know, I don't know what your faith is or anything, but anything that specifically, because I know it's one of the steps, right, that you have to connect to some kind of higher power or something. Did any of that work for you, or what's your take on spirituality?
I don't really believe in churches and the Christian God, but I do believe in there being something out there. I believe in fate and destiny, and I believe in like spiritualism and stuff like that. I do closely follow that. You know, I'm no witch, but I just, I believe in all that spiritual stuff and all that.
Yeah, it seems like you're pretty mellow about it, and you're more of a lead by example kind of guy.
Right.
More like taking the action, actually forward thinking too. You know, you were mentioning that a lot of people really focus too much on their addiction or their story of being addicted as opposed to, how they're going to battle it, like what they're going to do from this point forward to change. So I think that's a great point to bring up too, man. You know, that you really need to think of what can you do going forward and what are your behavioral changes, right? Like, and for you, it's the gym. You know, not everybody's going to connect to the gym,
right,
but everybody will have something. There's always something.
Always something.
So,
to bounce off of what you said, when I was in addiction, I always tried to be a leader. I always tried to be in charge. It was part of having to be in control. You know, it was a bad quality. It was another one of those bad qualities I had. I had quite a few, but that was definitely one of the worst ones because I always thought I had to be in charge. I always tried to be in charge, and I don't even know if I was, honestly. I can't tell you. But I do know this. I don't try to be in charge anymore. I just go forward. I lead the way, and whoever wants to follow me is right, and everybody that doesn't want to follow me is wrong. No, I'm kidding. But I just try and lead the way, man. I try to lead by example. I do me. I don't care about being in charge. If people want to follow me, if people want me to show them what I know, I will. I've never turned anyone away, not for money, not for circumstances. I've never turned anyone that asked me, will you please train me at the gym? I need this. Never turned anyone away, because if I had been turned away, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. Yeah. So that's how I live my life. I give back, you know. I train my entire family. I train friends. I train anybody that asks. At first I thought about charging, and I just don't. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I just train anybody that asks.
But I mean, feeling like other people are counting on you, you know, like that. You're a huge example, man. But just the fact that you'll give without even expecting anything in return, it says a lot about your character, you know. And a lot of people these days, they need somebody like that. You know, that's why I wanted to have you here on the podcast, because when I saw that post, it was just so inspiring. And I was just like, man, like, I don't know. Everything that you said in one of your posts on Facebook, I was like, I got to have him on. You know, like, he's going to be on my list. And I'm really excited that we did this today,
Me too, man.
You know,
this is great.
It's been great. And one of the things, like, you know, before we wrap up, like, anything that you would say to anybody, you know, either struggling with addiction or even family members, because that's the hardest part. You know, I've been on a supportive role as a family member, and it's been one of the most difficult things watching somebody that you love and care about go through this, you know, the biggest challenge that you could actually see somebody go through. Like, what are some things, like, maybe you would advise
I got two
supportive
things.
roles?
I got two things for you. I'm not sure if this is going to answer your question, but just popped in my head while you were saying what you were saying. So I'm living proof that no one's beyond redemption. I did bad things, and I'm not saying that to sound cool. I did bad things. I was one of the worst up here. I hurt everybody I came into contact with. No one is beyond redemption. If you want to change, change. Doesn't matter what anybody thinks. Doesn't matter what anybody says. All that matters is what you think. And if you think that you want to change, you're not beyond redemption. You can do it. And it'll be okay. And as well as the family thing, I can't speak for how families can deal with it, but I can tell you this. My mom used to lie awake at night, waiting for a phone call that I was dead, in tears. And now, she doesn't worry about me anymore. Now, you know, she smiles. And she looks at me, and the way that she looks at me is with, like, pride. And that fucking gets me. And, like, I could never go back to being the person that I was, because it just doesn't exist anymore. It's not in the cards. It's not feasible. I could never bounce back no matter what happened to me. Not just because of the way my mom looks at me, but because, I don't know, the way everybody looks at me. I'd rather be a shining light than fucking dimming everybody's spark. I just dimmed the glow of everybody in my family around me. I made people never think about it's always on the you when you're in addiction. You don't think about if you die, that's it for you. You destroy your family. They don't get over that. You think mothers and fathers get over losing a child to drugs? I'm here to tell you that they'll never get over it. It'll never be the same. And it's fucking selfish. I was selfish my whole life. That's why I try to give back. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely did a great job, man, doing that. And you're a huge example. And I think that just us connecting, you know, like I'd mentioned, we weren't close friends in high school, you know, but your post, and because of what you went through for years, I saw that little post in that one little second on that specific day that you posted it, and I was like, it hit home. You know, it hit home for me from being in that role and losing somebody that I love to addiction. And one of my biggest things that, you know, that I hope is that this podcast gets out there and that your story gets heard, and that's why I wanted to have you on. I wanted to just have you on just to highlight you as an example of somebody, and you said it best, you know, like, what was it again about the redemption?
No one's beyond redemption.
No one's beyond redemption, you know, and I think that was extremely powerful statement, man. And a lot of people will really listen to this, and I'm hoping that even if it helps one person.
Even if it helps, seriously, if it helps one person, then mission accomplished.
Yeah. But keep doing what you're doing, man, and
Thanks,
keep
brother.
working out and doing your thing, and definitely think about maybe guest speaking anywhere, you know, and talking more about your story. You have a great story to share, and I hope more people get a chance to hear it. But thanks so much, man, for coming in today
Thanks
and
for
recording with
having
me. Would love to have you again anytime you want.
Awesome.
But yeah,
Okay.
that's Dan Fink, everybody.
Thanks for
And
listening, guys.
Have a great one.
Don't do drugs, kids.